welcome everyone to some super casual, super conversation based feedback, questions and answers time, almost an ask me anything, see if you can stump the coach. But our goal here is to help you learn how to be more innovative and to apply Scrum and be better and continue your learner journey. And we've got quite a few questions here that have been posted over the last few days and weeks as we've been doing this. There's a lot out here, a lot of really good stuff. We've got people that are joining the stream with us. With me today is Matteo Antello, who's going to help facilitate this and make sure I don't look like a complete idiot when it comes to facilitating these things. For those that have had the pleasure of taking one of our classes, Matteo is often a fixture in it and is one of our learner team members, but it does a lot of our class producing. Matteo, shout out to the audience.
Hey everyone. I'm really excited that we are getting to do this. This is something that we've been thinking about for a while, and I'm glad that there's a really casual setting for us that we'll be able to help pick Chris's brain a little bit and try to get some Scrum out for people.
All right. So it looks like we're streaming in our Discord because that was the loop that was happening. We've got YouTube Live. We've got lots of ways this is going. Matteo is going to call out the answers in the chat. Just throw your questions out there. If there's feedback you want, just remember there's a little bit of a delay. So it might take a little bit to get out there, but we want this to be back and forth, and we're looking forward to this. So Matteo, what is the first question?
So we've gotten a question from Miss Heidi, and that is, what are the most common mistakes a new Scrum Master makes, and what would be a remedy for some of those mistakes?
Oh, that's a good one. And that was not the first one I saw on the list originally. So now I was completely answering the other one in my head. Heidi, glad to have you on and have your support. What are the most common mistakes I see in new Scrum Masters? So some of the early ones are Scrum Masters they take servant leadership, which was in the previous Scrum guide. It's actually changed in the recent one because of this. They take that servant leadership and they focus on the servant part of it, and they become servants to the team, and they become the admins, and they're scheduling the things, they're buying the donuts, they're doing all this stuff, and they're forgetting the leadership part of it. Scrum Masters are leaders on the team. That doesn't mean they're the boss. It doesn't mean that they're there to crack the whip and make you work harder or tell you how you're going to do your job. They're there to lead you to first be really, really good at continuous improvement, be really good at diving into and understanding the Scrum framework and getting better at it. They're there to hold you accountable. And hey, you said you were going to do this. Is there something I can do to help make that easier for you so that you can be better at solving and getting work done? So again, a common mistake, it's, hey, I'm going to be there. I'm in the back. I'm being quiet and I'm not leading. And that's what we want to really change. And in fact, it was such an important thing that in the most recent Scrum guide, Jeff I can directly address this and took the term servant leadership out and flipped it so that more emphasis could be placed on the leadership part of what being a Scrum Master is. The other thing that I see is not preparing. So going into events cold, not having an idea of an agenda of what the outcomes need to be, and really just trying to wing it. Thinking through and being very, very purposeful in how you help facilitate the different events is important, and something I see a lot of Scrum Masters miss out on. So, hey, I'm going into a daily Scrum. How can I make my daily Scrum not suck? So what are the things and ways I need to do that so that the team can be engaging? And it's not, again, not performing, but it's thinking through what that facilitation looks like and really driving that event and being prepared when you go into it. So spend a few minutes. If you're going into a daily Scrum, spend 5 minutes preparing, looking at the backlog, make sure you know how to walk the plank, seeing if there's anything that from the last day, any notes or things, get that in your mind and have that agenda ready to go, and then do that. And you don't have to be, In fact, it shouldn't be a big spend a lot of time doing this and make it this big formal thing. The more you can make that conversational, make it look almost like there isn't an agenda, but you're still driving, is something I see be really, really effective. For longer events, spend more time, and then really make sure you're driving. I see a lot of complexity in my coaching. I see a lot of complexity in refinement sessions. People talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and nothing is ever decided. Nothing ever comes out of it, and everyone is frustrated and feels they waste a bunch of time. Be prepared to really drive that and have a lot of different facilitation tools in your back pocket, and constantly learning what those tools are. Things like innovation games come to mind. Game storming is another great book that you can do to prepare for that. So those are some things that I see new Scrum Masters make those two, again, not being prepared, and not taking the time to prepare. It's not that they're being unprepared. They're not taking some extra time to really be ready for the specific event they're going into, and not being a leader, and being the servant first and not the leader first. So yeah, great question. I love that. Mateo, did you have any questions kind of follow up on that?
Um, you were kind of talking about like what game storming and the innovation games are in terms of like what they are tools. I just haven't heard of them at all. Like, can you explain it a little bit more?
Sure.
Because
So innovation games, it's been around for a while. It's a really cool, just book of games. I mean, think of it like a recipe book. I want to make chicken cacciatore tonight. Well, I'm going to go look at my recipe book and figure out how to do this. Or I need to plan a fancy dinner. I'm going to go to my recipe book and look up fancy dinners. Innovation games, game storming, and there's a lot out there. Those are two that I like to go back to and use a lot. Those are recipe books for ways that you can facilitate different events. Innovation games are meant to be, let's play fun, creative activities. We do one called the product box. I was just helping set up a product box activity we're going to do for Sigao. And that's a way to be very creative and get a backlog built. And the game storming gives you some additional things that are on that. It talks a lot about divergence and convergence, and hey, we need divergent thinking. So what kinds of activities can we do to get some really divergent ideas out there? And divergent is, I want lots of ideas. It's the first part of brainstorming. Get a lot of things out there. But it's a lot of things. You have a lot of different ways of solving a problem. You need to converge on, this is the thing that we need to go do. And typically you want to go back and forth in there. So these are techniques that as a Scrum Master, you should be deepening your T on these kinds of events. And by the way, y'all, Mateo is a phenomenal Scrum Master for our learner team. So he's and a relatively new Scrum Master, although you've been trained for a while. So
yeah, I think I'm officially at probably 5 months as a Scrum Master or something like that. But
and then even longer as certified. You got certified like when you were what, 5?
Yeah, I was 16, I think, when that happened.
Okay.
But yeah, it was certainly.
All right, so 6 months ago.
Yeah.
All right.
So
cool, Mateo. Go ahead.
Let's go ahead and see what our next question. Sorry, I have a roommate, believe it or not. So we have a question from another one of our viewers, Katya. What is the best advice you have for someone in a product owner role that also needs to fill the Scrum Master role? How can you handle both?
Whew. Katya, I'm going to advise you not to do both. The roles are fundamentally like extremely different. The skills and things you're going to be deepening as a product owner are really, in a lot of ways, skills that are counter to what you need to be deepening as a Scrum Master. So product owners are all about ideas and thinking about the future, looking about what could be. Or a Scrum Master needs to look at what is and how can that be better. And so these two, like, even looking at it at different times, I'm looking in the future, I'm looking at now, the cognitive load of going between the two can be overwhelming. I've done that before. I've been both the Scrum Master and product owner on the team, and I did both really, really bad. And most people that I see kind of run into that end up not doing great at either, because again, it's just too much to load. So what I've coached in those situations when I see them is, first of all, tell HR to take a back seat for a little bit because we're looking at roles, we're not looking at job titles. Sometimes people get hung up, Scrum Master, well, that means you need to get a pay bump or things like that. You really need to help make that not be an issue and instead look at what roles a team needs to be successful. So if you can't afford to go hire a separate Scrum, or not even afford, if there's not the luxury of having two separate people that have those as full-time roles, which is very typical, especially in early organizations doing Scrum, get the Scrum Master role, get someone on the team to be able to pick up and take that mantle. And it's much easier to be a Scrum Master and developer. And when I say developer, I'm using the Scrum Guide team member, like it's someone that's building stuff. It's much easier to do either product owner and developer and Scrum Master and developer than it is to do product owner and Scrum Master. Those I see work really well, and often, even when I'm a product owner, I'm a doer product owner. I pull backlog, I do work. It's hard to get me where I'm not doing that. That can work completely fine. In fact, that's very few situations I see a product owner be just a product owner and even a Scrum Master be just a Scrum Master. Usually they're picking up some developer and they're getting work done. So yeah, my recommendation, Katya, is to seriously consider finding someone else on the team to take one of those roles, and don't do both. Just because it's a recipe for things blowing up in your face. The cognitive load is just too much. So that's what I would recommend there.
So kind of like a follow-up question on that, the product owner is supposed to spend 50% of their time with the customer and 50% of their time with the team. If a product owner is a product owner and a team member, does that 50% of the team, does that get split in a certain way or anything like that?
Right. Well, Mateo, that's a really good point. So the 50%, that's not a hard rule. You're not going to find that in the Scrum Guide. That's something that we see really great product owners or really great teams use as a guideline. A lot of times the kind of work that a team's doing, if you do it right, is engaging the customer throughout the entire time. So you're bringing them in, and so as product owner you're going to get that opportunity to be in front of a customer and be understanding a customer and working with them. So I wouldn't change that, because the perspective is, and kind of the real rule of thumb is, half of your brain is devoted to helping the customer, half of your brain is devoted to helping the team understand the customer, helping your developers understand and drive that. So you still want to do that. You still got to have that, even if you're doing and solving. Sometimes you might have to be creative. That 50-50, that's always, always, always. Every time when I see teams go through a transformation, at some point the product owners are complaining about that. There's no way I can spend 50% of my time. I don't have that time. I'm doing too much. It's to, one, be creative in how you deliver your work. My team builds learning and coaching and is deepening our understanding of Scrum. But when I'm delivering and I'm doing work with students in the room, I'm actually spending time with my customers there. If I'm a developer and actually writing software, having your developers go do field visits and observe their code, their system being used, is a time to get you that customer exposure, and you're building it into your backlog. Sometimes you need to be a little bit creative in that. But that's a good follow-up question to that.
So we do have another question from Heidi, and it is, what are the soft skills most needed for being an SM and a PO? She's asking as someone who is trying to gauge which role fits them best.
Oh, well, a lot of the core soft skills, the ability to have a conversation, the ability to show up to work on time and to manage your stuff and keep organized, are important. Are going to be consistent across any of the roles, including the developer role in Scrum. Product owners need to be very future focused. They're really focused on what could be, where the Scrum Master really is understanding what is and how can I make the current state better. So Scrum Masters are your the diagnostician. They're going in, they're looking at the different issues the team's having. Hey, our velocity has been flat and it hasn't moved. and they're going to get very frustrated by that, and they're going to say, what can we do to make this better? Like, I don't like this, the things there. So they get this tenacity, almost this bulldog approach. What can we do to help make this better? Whereas product owners often, in relation, or it's definitely compared to a Scrum Master, might seem flighty. They're constantly jumping to the next thing. They're out there, they're talking to lots of customers, they have the next cool idea, and they're bringing the next cool idea in to the team and seeing that on the backlog. That can feel very flighty, but it's also very important. You really need both. And then the developers are the ones that are executing on it. We've got friends over at the Two Ravens, which is coming here in Birmingham. Dr. Lindsay Sutton, I'm meeting with her tomorrow. She has this thing called the Hidden Innovators, which is an assessment that assesses across three ways of doing work. You have dreamers that are looking in the future. You have sages that are understanding now, and you have tinkerers that they innovate by building first. So they're the ones that are immediately going and they want to start building something. While there's not always a clear overlap, because I've definitely seen product owners that are tinkerers, I've seen product owners that are kind of in all three. Typically, we see product owners do really well as a dreamer, with maybe a little bit of tinkerer, and we see Scrum Masters be that sage with a little bit of tinkerer. They're really wanting to understand and to figure out how to make better. And your developers tend to be the ones that are going to go do. They want to go build. They're if you hold them back, they get very frustrated talking about the future, and they get very frustrated talking about the now. They want to change. And so I see that be a really good way to consider the role. So your product owner, again, it's there lots of strategy, lots of future thought, lots of ideation, and coming up with lots of different ideas, helping their team determine what the most important thing is that they need to focus on, and be able to communicate that back. So really strong communicators, they're really good politicians, they're really good ideators, whereas Scrum Master or activators, they want to help the team move forward. They're problem solvers. They want to go figure out the existing problem the team's having, not from a code. Larry Tribble, who's our COO, gave me this advice. When I moved from a developer into a leadership role, he said, you need to move from this, solving problems by typing on a keyboard, to this, solving problems by pulling puppet strings and figuring out how to help the people in the situation, the humans, figure out how to work together. And I think that works really well. The Scrum Master needs to figure out what strings can be pulled within the team to help the team function better. So I'd love to hear any feedback on that. I'll tell you, what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I really liked that analogy, the analogy of the puppet strings, because for me at least, as someone who does not have that much experience in the business world, I always try to think of the Scrum Master as the person that just goes around and tries to help out, and is necessarily they're just another person in the trench, but like they're the person that's bringing you water or whatever. But I didn't really think about how you could be more in the back and using some of the like coaching from the back of the room or teaching from the back of the room. I forget what the specific framework is, but it's more of a sitting back and actually listening to what is going on and kind of looking at the whole puppet show as a whole instead of just the specific act.
Right. And I want to be clear, I'm not calling your team members puppets, but your job is not just to bring water. Hey, you're getting thirsty a lot. I'm bringing a lot of water so you can keep doing. We're going to do that. Is there something we can do a little bit better? Maybe can we take some time? I wonder if we can build better pipes into this and run some water into the trench so like you can have water right there with you. I mean, I'll keep bringing the water, but can we help make that situation even better, and helping them see those potential opportunities to improve, identify them, and go work on them.
So I guess kind of a follow-up on that, how often have you realized that you do have this one person that just keeps on running out water to this one person because they're constantly thirsty? How often do you see that, oh, maybe if we just put the pipes in, then we wouldn't need this person to run water anymore? They could do something else.
All the time. One of the important things in Scrum that's kind of at the very core, and we can thank Esther Derby for this, is the Kaizen and the retrospective. So Esther came up with a retrospective. The Kaizen is this idea of we're going to do something, an experiment this sprint to get better. And it's so critical that we're doing this. So Scrum Masters, you're there to help coach a team to an effective Kaizen out of your retrospective. And a Kaizen in this example is, hey, let's spend some of the team's effort to go dig a pipe. Let's not wait for someone else to do it. Like, let's just go. We got shovels. Let's dig some things and put a pipe in and connect it somewhere. Let's actually spend some of our effort towards doing that. And that's absolutely critical. So, yeah, all the time. And if you're constantly focused on delivering, you've got those tinkerers and they're solving other people's problems. They don't always, sometimes you feel guilty to take time to solve your own problems. As a product owner, we might feel guilty because, hey, I've got to turn down delivering features to my customers because the team's going to work at getting better. But here's the thing, and why we say you have to prioritize getting better at the top of your backlog. It is the most important thing you do. If you can double your team's effort by spending a couple points, the return on that investment is phenomenal. And teams that really get serious at taking those kaizens in and doing that, they literally, we see the 200 to 400% improvement on average across all of our teams, and that's immensely valuable. So take that time, do it. I do see one of the common mistakes that new teams make is they don't. They feel guilty. The product owner might be pressuring them to know we got to deliver, we got to deliver, we got to deliver. I hear it all the time. Product owners, I need to be clear on this. You do not need to deliver more than you need to have your team get better. You will be able to deliver more to your customers faster if you prioritize your team getting better and make that be the most important thing. All right, I can step off my soapbox for a little bit on that one. Mateo, what's the next question?
So the next question that we do have, so what is the best way for getting a team from going to a performing team to a high performing team in terms of like the agility scale or just in your own metrics in any way?
Yeah, good question. Hyper performing teams is what that whole red, or actually the yellow book talks about hyper performing teams a lot. Um, if you apply the Scrum guide, you're going to see some improvement. If you just do basic, bland, vanilla, out of the box Scrum, you're going to see a little bit of improvement. One thing that we try to teach in our classes is not out of the box Scrum, because out of the box Scrum is great and phenomenal. It gives you a phenomenal framework, but you need more to get to true hyper performing. If you stop there, you'll get a little bit of improvement, but not enough. So it's one of the cool things that Jeff Sellerin and other people have put out on the market are these Scrum pattern languages of practice. It's a horrible name. Scrum Plop or scrumplop.org is the website. I hate the name so bad, but I love what it is. What it is are patterns and practices we see that high performing teams do that regular teams do not. Um, and it's this really cool list of these interconnecting patterns that you can do that if you apply them consistently will get you that 200 to 400% improvement and get you to this hyper performing state. And it's interesting, the whole thing works a lot like a recipe book. Hey, are you getting a lot of interruptions coming into your sprint? You're constantly being interrupted, and so that's preventing you from getting work done. Well, hey, go cook you up an interrupt pattern. Go do these steps, and then you're going to help those interrupts. They'll still come, but you got a pattern that's going to allow you to deal with interrupts. You're dealing with remote teams. Well, go look at quantum entanglement and invest in bringing teams together, looking at building the social guidance. We're bringing Mateo to Birmingham this summer so he could connect with the core kind of Sigao team to kind of build that relationship. Invest in that. And so that's a pattern you can do. I've got remote teams. I'm going to go use quantum entanglement. Or you ever come in, you got a cluttered work area, you can't find your stuff, and it takes you forever to get things done. Well, good housekeeping pattern is going to tell you what you need to do to keep your area clean and keep your code clean and keep your work product clean so you can begin work much faster. And by the way, all these fit together. The happiness pattern, I need to focus on making my team happy because happy teams produce better work faster. Well, teams that produce work faster have more time to handle interrupts. Teams that finish early finish faster. It's another one of the patterns. Teams that actually aren't taking so much work into their sprint, they're taking what they can get done, means they accelerate, they finish faster, and then they have time to get better, to think ahead. All of these things work together and are the fundamental difference between blah teams and teams that are rock star. And I've seen this the last year and a half. I've seen thousands of people, hundreds of teams go through this process. It is amazing. Just taking one of the patterns, I was working with a team that was really struggling, like really genuinely struggling. The company was looking to potentially even get rid and outsource all of their effort. And we began applying just a couple of the patterns. And this sounds so much like a late night TV shop at home kind of sales pitch, ShamWow pitch. But I'm going to say it anyway because it's true. This team was able to apply. They started with the interrupt pattern. We had happiness, teams that finished early, finished faster, and yesterday's weather. 4 very basic patterns that were easy to do. We were able to do that inside a sprint. We started with the interrupt buffer, and they immediately doubled the amount of work they were able to get done just because they were able to handle interruptions. When we started adding these others, they started seeing that doubling and doubling to the point that this team actually became one of the kind of reference model for how teams should work with, how Scrum should work with this organization, how teams should work, because they were doing so well and kind of kicking it out of the park that it works. And I was nowhere near the believer before as I was after, because when I saw it work and I saw it be such a simple thing, I looked like a magician coming in applying these patterns. And they're things that any Scrum Master can go do. They're easy to do, and they are radically impactful. So, yep.
So it seems like patterns do have a massive impact on how the Scrum team overall works and stuff like that. So should it be the Scrum Master's job to try putting on some new patterns on the Scrum team every now and then to try and see how velocity if it will go down, or if efficiency will go up or anything like that?
Yeah, that definitely could be something that can come up as a Kaizen. As a Scrum Master, part of what you're doing is you need to be learning, scouting ahead, and then bringing that back to the team. And so, hey, team, I'm reading this pattern. I think we have some problems. Can we take 30 minutes after our daily today, talk about this and see if this is something we want to do, and presenting that. Sometimes you might even have to force it. So as a leader, while you're definitely not there, you're like, this isn't the first thing you do. But if you see a team that's just stagnant, stuck in the mud, they're not doing it, sometimes you have to change the container on them, change how you get work done. You say, hey, team, for the next sprint, we're going to have a rule in place, and we're going to follow this particular pattern. All interrupts are going to come to the product owner. The product owner is going to decide if we do it, and we're going to take a percentage of our points and not commit to work. And we're going to see what this happens. I know you didn't select it, but as a leader, I'm seeing a problem. I want to help apply. Ideally, they jump on it first, but sometimes you might have to give them a little bit of nudge. You only do it for their good. Make sure when you're making those decisions that you are actively wanting to help them be better and be better at what they do. And so have that in mind when you do that.
Well, thank you for that.
All right.
Let's go into the next question.
All right.
So what is the benefit of using a sprint system instead of just using Kanban? So the basis behind this question is Kanban tends to not have a lot of urgency or priority. Everything tends to be urgent, but not a lot seems to be prioritized. Can you speak a little bit more on that?
Absolutely. And yeah, I love this. This is month 2 of a team doing Scrum. They come to me and Scrum doesn't work for us. We have too much interruptions coming in. We just need to do Kanban. We read this thing, and Kanban is easy. We can just put stuff in our sprint. It could change every single day. And so it becomes a solution to a problem, but it's a solution that every time I've seen it done fails. First of all, Kanban at its core, if you were following Kanban, is extremely tough to do. I would say it's far more difficult to implement effective Kanban than it is to implement effective Scrum. It's not impossible. We do it, and sometimes Kanban is the right thing to do. But what I'm actually seeing and seeing even more success in, and especially when I get into the infrastructure teams that I've worked with, teams that are designed by nature are getting a lot of their help desk kinds of teams, where Kanban oftentimes might make a little bit of sense to do in a help desk. What I'm seeing is a team with a really big interrupt buffer actually works better than teams that are going straight up Kanban. And so Kanban, again, it's the reason it's so hard is because it's not doing away with events. It's actually saying we're going to do planning at the start of the day. We're going to do lots of events throughout the day. We're constantly changing. And you need to be really good at understanding and you have a well-defined process that's consistent. We're following this, making sure our work in progress is being maintained. We're doing a lot of metrics to drive what we're doing and constantly inspect. It works really well in manufacturing settings. There's places where Kanban makes a lot of sense. What we're seeing more in the product development, the software development world, where we might see a lot of Scrum implemented, is that, again, what Scrum allows you to do is to plan a little bit further ahead. Work that is planned, we see and learned, is less stressful, less anxiety inducing than work that's constantly changing. Interruptions, unplanned work we do it, it will happen, but that can be very stressful on a team. You've got context switching costs, you got lots of different things. So ideally, as much as possible, we want to favor work that is planned out. Now, not too far advanced, that's why we do sprint planning. We're only planning a sprint ahead at a time. But teams that have a lot of churn, they have a lot of stuff that needs to flow through quickly, and they have a lot of interruptions that are coming in. What you could do is say, hey, we're going to actually put a 50% buffer on us, meaning if we have a velocity of 20, 10 points are going to be interruptions and 10 points are going to be planned. Or 15 points are going to be dedicated interruptions. We're not going to plan those during sprint planning, but we're going to plan 5 points. And what I do when I see situations like that is there something within those 5 points or those 10 points, that smaller percentage that you can prioritize that's going to allow you to have more and more planned work. So let's say we're looking at an infrastructure team that's constantly looking at, hey, people are in a huge organization. We're having to set up laptops. And setting up laptops take time. I can't always predict when people are hiring. And it's just something I've got to go do. It's going to take a lot of time. Well, maybe could you automate the process of rolling a laptop out? And so can you take that 5 points and spend it, plan it towards taking your biggest churn item, the biggest interruption, and making it go faster and reducing the amount of time it takes to do that task, even fully automating it. Things like a new laptop could be fully automated if tied into your HR system. And so making that whole process go automagical. So if they take time to do that, what happens over the longer life of the team is those interrupts become less stressful, more efficient because they're taking time to make their process, to work on their process, to get better. So again, I love Kanban. Kanban has its place. Don't ever jump to Kanban because you think it's the solution. Jump to Kanban because you know it's the solution for where you're at. Instead, try to do Scrum with a large interrupt pattern. And I see that just work magic, and especially on the infrastructure teams that I work with, help desk teams that I've worked with, that's just a magic solution for them. Again, as Scrum Masters, you want to look like you're wizards with lots of black magic behind you. Start doing some of those patterns and see what happens with your teams, and it'll be life-changing to their experience. They might not like it up first, but if you can help them go through the process, you'll end up better. Okay, what's the next question?
The next question. So I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but you do have a saying, failing fast, failing forward, and failing often. Can you talk about that and how has kind of shaped you in some way and how it has kind of shaped Sigao as well?
The first time I heard fail fast, fail often was a guy named Todd Miranda. Todd Miranda is a Microsoft MVP in town. He was working with me in Montgomery as an architect, just a phenomenal human being. He's talking about the importance of this fail fast, fail often. The fail forward is something that we've come to even adapt to that. Um, People that are afraid to fail don't try and don't dare to be amazing. Don't dare to do the unbelievable. Teams have to be in a culture that allows them to try things that might not work out. Um, because the reality is, everything that we do, every project that we start on, is this assumption that it's going to solve a problem. And if you are so scared of failure that it takes you forever to start something and to try something, then you're going to hold your organization back, you hold your product back, you hold innovation back. If you're in a company that does not embrace fail fast, fail forward, fail off, fail fast, fail often, fail forward mentality, you're holding your teams back because you're not building a psychological safety to experiment, to fail, and to learn. Um, we just hired a new Scrum Master. She helps facilitate. I'm not going to say the full word because I want to be PG, but F up nights, fun time. And the whole premise behind this is based out of a group in Mexico City. It's, can we celebrate failure? I worked when I was in Montgomery. It was one of the state's largest IT project. It was basically healthcare.gov, and it was a phenomenal failure. Not that we did anything wrong, not that we were not trying to do the right thing or doing anything illegal or doing anything inappropriate. It's that what we were trying to do is integrate 6 state agencies with 6 federal government agencies and try to make them all play nice. And there was lots of politics, lots of complexity involved. If you were compliant with one of these state agencies, you were actually out of compliance with another one of the state agencies. It's just this really fundamental thing. And we built a phenomenal organization that was able to, in a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the time, radically solve that problem. But we couldn't overcome the politics. We couldn't overcome some of the technology challenges, engineering that just weren't quite ready at the time. That was a very humbling and at first humiliating experience for me. I was meeting with one of the senior vice presidents at IBM that was in charge of a large organization about something after this had happened, and I was concerned about this failure. And he started laughing, and he brought up a Wikipedia article of a failure of his own. It was phenomenal. It was so phenomenal. It had a Wikipedia article on it. He said, if you're in this field and you haven't failed like this, then you actually haven't been in this field. What we do is hard, um, but you tried and you dared to do something different, and you learned a lot, and you did a lot of really good stuff for the state in pushing things forward. Did you get your ultimate? Did you have the outcomes you wanted? No. Have you learned from it? Hopefully so. And if you learn from it, you learn how to get better next time. And what we try to do in Scrum is to make the cost of failure much smaller, where it's not a huge ordeal after months or years of building something that, we might fail in a week, but we're going to learn in a week and we're going to get better next time. And if you can reduce the cost of failure, embrace the learning behind it and the validated learning. That's the fail forward mentality, is that you're learning and you're going to be better next time. That's where true innovation comes. That's where the freedom, the psychological safety to iterate come. You can't go, when someone fails, you can't just immediately begin to beat them down and berate them, because they won't fail again, but they're also not going to try. And so it's really critical. And so it's such a fundamental thing. It's not, again, not something you're going to see in the Scrum Guide, but organizations that don't have this mentality will absolutely hold their teams back and hold their success back. If you're not a little bit embarrassed by your release and you release too late, that's a term that we've become to trust and know came from Microsoft, and it makes a lot of sense. That's what we have to embrace, and that can be life changing. It's been life changing for me when I realized that it's okay to try and fail as long as I'm learning and I'm reducing the cost by trying lots of little things to find that one success. Eric Osterwater and Strategizer, that's the whole book. Strategizer is all around this concept, is try lots of things because most things are not going to work, but learn from them and learn fast and pivot. That's the lightning fast pivot that if you ask what my superpower is, I think it's become the lightning fast pivot. And that can be overwhelming to some, but I'm going to try a lot of things, and we're going to move really, really fast, and we're going to keep growing and getting better. And we're okay to screw up. It's okay.
I can tell from firsthand experience that you do like to go in different directions, sometimes multiple times within a sprint, but we don't need to
Yep.
talk about any of that.
Well, the idea is, yes, as we're learning, if you learn something, it's like the rat in a maze. If you bump into a wall, well, don't keep bumping into the wall. You've learned that that's not the direction. Well, find the right direction, move. Keep your focus on it. But the focus needs to be on the outcome, not how you're going to solve that outcome. Because if you stay stagnant on how you're going to solve the outcome, you're going to cause problems. That's where the pivot comes in, is how. The outcome should be what you hold firm on. And so the outcome at Sigao has been consistent. We want to help make lives better fundamentally. That sounds big and esoteric. That's not changed, and will not change. We measure our success by how we've improved the world around us. How we go do that is going to change and has changed a lot.
Interesting. So I guess kind of on a build-up question to that, what's your definition? Like, what's the difference between improvement and innovation, and how at Sigao are we either improving people's lives or innovating people's lives?
Whew. Well, hopefully we're doing both. And that's a good question. And it's a really subtle difference, because improvement can come through innovation, and innovation can build improvement. Uh, Innovation is, I'm going to go back to the time focus. Innovation is all about the future. It's building something that doesn't exist today. Improvement is making what exists today better. Now, innovation almost always, when done right and measured right, almost always should improve. I'm going to say should improve. And sometimes we build things that we shouldn't have, and they make the world worse. Tobacco. We made cigarettes a lot better, but we also gave a lot of people lung cancer in the process. So it might have been innovation, but that wasn't necessarily improvement. Um, but innovation done right should improve lives. Improvement is really, again, it's what the Scrum Master helps the team do. The Scrum Master is going to help the team improve how they get things done so the lives are better. Typically, it's not huge, monumental shifts in what you're doing. It's smaller improvements that you're trying lots of things. That's that Kaizen is a small improvement we can do to get better. Whereas innovation tends to be future and big. We're making big changes to our process in what we're doing. And as far as Sagao, I really hope we do both. I hope, and we're trying to constantly innovate and move forward. One of the innovations we're actively working on is, can we democratize Scrum coaching and Scrum training so that more people can have. I would love for anyone that needs to come through our training to improve their lives not have to pay for it. But we can't stay in business and do that. We need to be innovative and figure out how to go do that. So that's an innovation we're working on that's all around democratizing, getting more people, and improving the diversity, equity, and inclusion in the agile world, because frankly, it needs it. We need a more diverse, equitable, inclusive agile world. So those are innovations we're working on. The improvement are, hey, we're going to go teach a team how to do the interrupt buffer. We're going to improve their life today. We're not creating a new pattern, we're applying a pattern. And I want us to do both, because both are important.
Cool. That's a lot more than I thought that we'd get out of that.
Yeah. All right.
I'm glad that's the guy. I'm glad that's the guy. We're out and actually doing stuff, which is good.
Good.
And apparently we're also helping people. Scrum is helping solve cancer in the Birmingham.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things. And Rebecca Dobrinsky, who's one of our new Scrum Masters, she's worked with Surflocks, which is a company in town that is actively solving cancer, helping make the diagnosis time of cancer go faster, or the treatment time. And she'd have to give the details, but if you want to get cured of cancer, there's a really big process to figure out what stuff is going to help you, and they're trying to make that faster. So they're actively working to help cure cancer, and she helped implement Scrum within their process to make it more efficient and effective. And so things like that. Fledging and is just a great company. They're able to double the amount of times it takes to make these new products that they're doing. I can't wait to get my charger that's going to, their um, charger that I've got coming that's going to help do everything on my. It's just really cool. But they're doubling the amount of time, doubling the speed at which they can do it. So reducing their time in half of getting new products to market and being more confident in the products they're getting to market. And this is a small business that's growing and thriving, and they're able to apply Scrum in that. I worked with someone at Innovation Depot, Kelly Clark, who said Scrum saved her marriage in one of our last one go live we did on Instagram. And she talks about how it just helps her get her day to day done. So it's not even in technology. It's not even, we've seen it in research, medical settings. We've seen it in product development, software development. We've seen it in personal lives, certainly in startups and building successful businesses. It's been in restaurants. We're seeing it in construction, just in a lot of really cool areas. And yeah, Sigao, our goal is to be at the forefront of all of that, especially within our region, and we're passionate about that.
So the product owner is supposed to be one of the people that is in charge of the overall vision of the team. So who does the product owner necessarily report to? Who's the boss of the product owner in some way, if there is one?
Really good question. And I'm going to give it will vary based on the size organization that you're in. Scrum does not replace hierarchy. Hierarchy can be very effective, but hierarchy is also not. Let me correct that. Hierarchy and hierarchical management, who's my boss, can be very efficient. It's not always very effective. And there's a lot of downsides. If you've got a really strong hierarchical structure, you risk building these fiefdoms and people that are going to control, like, these are my people, my team. They do what I tell them to. And that creates these huge inefficiencies. And I've seen it in small companies. I've seen it in huge companies with thousands of people working. And it's something that if we can break hierarchy down, instead of working in hierarchy, we work in a network. Networks are more efficient and more effective. They can be more efficient over time, but they're not always easy to build up. And so the number one way to communicate information is not to go through a big hierarchical chain of command. And this is the whole purpose behind Team of Teams and General McChrystal talking about the fact if a team learns something, Team A learns something, and Team A reports up to General A, and they got to go through their entire chain of command to communicate to General A, who then communicates to General B, who communicates through her chain of command. The amount of time it takes is not great for that signal to get from Team A to Team B. What we want to do in Scrum is the way that two teams communicate is not through a bunch of hierarchical BS. Someone on Team A calls someone on Team B and has a conversation. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And I'm going a very meandering way to answer the question, who does the product owner report to? And say that ideally, who you report to has very little impact on your day-to-day life. Who you report to should focus on how you improve from an HR standpoint, how you get better, what's your next goals to building your career. Your manager, your boss is passionate about seeing you grow in the company and grow in your skills. And helping you figure out if you're solving a really big problem that you don't know how to go solve, they're a coach to come in and help. And in that case, it really doesn't matter who your manager is. It could be another product owner. It could be, I see product executives, chief product officers, product managers, oftentimes might be the HR reporting thing, but that needs to have a small, an important, but a small part of what your day-to-day is. The network, the network where you're saying, hey, product owner A needs to be really good friends with other product owners because they're sharing information. that's where most of your time is going to come in. That's what Scrum at Scale addresses. Um, and it's really big on that. And I've seen huge organizations adopt Scrum at Scale, um, and really kind of counter a lot of the traditional hierarchical command. There's, again, a place for hierarchy. And I keep looking. Yeah, I've got it. John Cotter, in his book Accelerate, and even before, kind of driving author Leading Change, he talks about the importance of hierarchy has its place and does its thing. But then just because you report to someone doesn't mean that's how that has any decision on how you do your day to day. And so you build this dual operating model where part of your work is done and part of the stuff that could be really that can leans into hierarchy being really efficient. That's done through a traditional hierarchical structure, but there is a dual operating model where something that's more agile, that's more network focused comes in and comes to play. And so that's what we try to do. So at Sigao, the product owners report to me. I'm the chief product owner, but they report to me from an HR standpoint. I'm not necessarily telling them and commanding what their day to day is. I deliver priority. Here is the most important priority for Sigao at this time, and help make that clear. But I'm not going to tell them what to do on a day to day basis. So I don't go to Haley and say, hey, I need you to do these 3 steps today. I go to Haley and say, hey, Haley, my most important thing that we're doing are 3 things. We need to continue on our path to financial stability. We need to continue on our path to an engaged company, and we need to come out innovative. We're building and letting the world know that we are the applied innovation experts, and that's what we come in and help. So those are our 3 priorities. Our 3 OKRs. Our number 1 priority is how many lives are we going to change? How are we going to do that? How are we changing the world around us? And in specific, it's defined through these 3 OKRs. I bring that to Haley, and then she's going to go help be creative in how to go do that. I point the person in the direction they should go, and they figure out how to get there. And that's what we do. So the answer, who does the product owner report to, will depend on your company, but they should only report to someone in as much as is required for an HR standpoint, and keep that at HR and leadership standpoint, and keep that minimal. How the product owner reports needs to be very flexible and very network focused.
So you kind of touched on Scrum at Scale a little bit during that and how it does actually make the communication between teams better. When is the right time for a business to scale / are there some that shouldn't / why should they?
So scaling is expensive, difficult, and difficult. So the first rule of scaling Scrum, is do not scale Scrum. So that's the first rule. And we've learned as much as possible, you want your teams to be like your PBIs. We use the INVEST criteria, and independent is important. We want our teams to be independent. We want them to be able to function and deliver a working product, to understand priority and go solve their humans' problems without a lot of other complexity. But the reality is, companies that have more than one team will run into problems that are communication focused, that will run into some hierarchical problems. There's going to be organizational impediments that need to be solved and resolved. So when you see that, you want to implement a minimal viable bureaucracy. Jeff Sutherland coined that term, and I absolutely love it. Minimal viable bureaucracy. What is the least amount of stuff that you can do to help your teams communicate without being super prescriptive? And that's where Scrum at Scale comes in. So when you scale is when you have 2 teams working, you're scale, and you need to be thinking and evaluating those issues. But you need to do just enough work to solve those problems without doing so much that you add a lot of just junk on top of it. I will say, if you're looking at scaling, and this is going to be super self-serving, so I'm going to recommend other coaches. No, I'm not. I'm going to recommend us. If you have a scaling issue, go talk to a coach. Go talk to an expert that understands, that's seen this done, and can help you avoid the pitfalls, because there are a lot of pitfalls that you can go really, really bad and will really slow your organization down. And there's not an easy way. I can't give you a list of these are the 15 things to watch for. There's just so much variety in this. You bring someone in, get some help. If you go the safe route, scaling agile frameworks, they're going to push it in with these tons of like magic things. You can spend lots of money doing the stuff. Scrum Scale does a much more lightweight approach and says, all right, you're going to pay for a coach, just pay for a coach. Do that up front. And it doesn't have to be very expensive. It doesn't have to be very huge engagement. Just have a conversation. And heck, most of those conversations I'll do for free. Have an initial one and then we'll talk and see if it makes sense. But I can at least give you the things to watch for. But yeah, if you got to scale, get help because it's hard and it can really turn a company sideways.
So we do have we have patterns for the individual Scrum teams. Has there been any sort of patterns or anti-patterns that have showed up for like a scaled company in any way that you can think of?
So the patterns apply at scale as well. When you use Scrum Scale, the cool thing about Scrum Scale is it scales Scrum using Scrum. And that's fun to say. Say it 3 times fast. We scale Scrum using Scrum, scale Scrum using Scrum. So the same kinds of patterns is your organization. Are you handling interruptions well? Do you have happy teams? Are you using yesterday's weather at scale? Do you have refined ready backlog at scale? Are you following all these patterns work? And the anti-patterns, do you have a highly bureaucratic organization that's really, really slow? Do you have no organizational impediments? Are you not aware? If you have no organizational impediments, then that is an impediment because you have problems. Every company does, no matter how good you are, you're going to have problems. So it works inside Scrum at scale because we're going to follow the same kinds of things. We just look at it as a team of teams, General McChrystal systems theory-based approach. So yes, I would say they're the exact same patterns with the addition of organizational bloat and having a really poor understanding of your dual operating model and not making that really, really clear. So you get you actually care who your product owner reports to, and you make the product owner reporting structure super Byzantine, and you get micromanagement of chief product owner dictating from on high down to the teams. I've seen that before, and that's something that you really want to coach through and help get better. I've also seen that get better, and it can be like flipping a switch. It can be magic if you do it right.
We did just get a 2-minute warning, so I think that's going to give us one more question. I'm going to open it up to the chat and see if anybody has one. It's going to give a couple seconds of delay.
Sure. While that's going on, I want to, everyone that finds this stuff beneficial, anyone that's been through a class but wants a refresher on it, we have launched Scrum Launchpad. Scrum Launchpad is an on-demand training course that's really meant to be, I'm going to go into a retrospective. Can I watch 10 minutes of content and look through some stuff and be able to go into retrospective, run a great retrospective? It's meant to be your companion, your mini Scrum coach to be able to get in and do these things really well. So that's something we've launched. It's out there. There are lots of coupon codes since we've just launched it. So if you don't see one, ask Kaylee, ask Mateo, look in Discord. What we want to do is we want to help people have better access to this, and Scrum Launchpad is our way of kind of democratizing that approach. So this was my very quick commercial on Scrum Launchpad. Go check it out and please get it. We've had someone that was going in to interview for a job. They went through Scrum Launchpad and that helped them be ready for the job they were going into. And they got the job, by the way, which is pretty cool. So Mateo, do we have a question?
It does not look like we do. So I'll go ahead and finish us up with how is task assignment accomplished within the Scrum framework?
You do not assign tasks. We build pull systems, not push systems. So we might send things to teams. Hey, I need team A to go do this, solve this problem for us. But we hire a lot of really good people that don't need a boss telling them what to go do. So don't do that. Tell the team the direction they need to go and let them pull things in and they commit to it. And when you can just think about it. If your mom tells you to go do something, you're going to be a little bit resistant. But if you voluntarily pick something up without your mom telling, you two, you're probably going to be more likely, more willing, and more excited to get it done, especially if you make a public commitment to it. If you tell your mom you're going to go do this, then we're going to feel bad about not doing it. So we want pull systems where we pull from the backlog and the team decides what they're going to do and not push. Again, we might give problems to solve to a team, but we don't tell them how to go do this because we've hired experts. We let them go do. I think that is a great place to end today. Mateo, anything else?
I think that is it. We have officially blown our time box. I'm not doing the best as a Scrum Master right now. I think we are all good for today.
Well, Mateo, you will turn in. I'm just going to take 1.5 Scrum points, Scrum cards from you. So you still keep most of your Scrum cards. I helped blow our time box. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I hope you found this valuable. Please let us know. Give us comments, give us likes, give us follows, all that other stupid stuff that all the famous YouTube personalities do. We're here to help. Please let us know how we can help and how we can help make your world better. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.
See ya.